Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my case study. So I chose to work with a National History Day student for my case study, and I'm going to call her Sophie. So for National History Day this year, their topic was breaking barriers. And so Sophie decided to write a paper as her entry, um, and it was on Upton's book, The Jungle, Upton Sinclair's book, The Jungle. And if you haven't heard of The Jungle, it is basically about the poor worker conditions in the meatpacking district, and it sparked a movement for better worker conditions all around the world. So she is 11 years old and is in the 5th grade. She's Caucasian, and I'm assuming she's the middle class because her dad works over at INL here in Rexburg, and then her mom is a stay-at-home mom. She's the oldest of 5 children, and she also has, so that means she has 4 younger siblings. Sophie brought a lot of enthusiasm about the topic. So The Jungle is not a light read, and it has a lot of graphic descriptions of worker conditions, and I think it's very interesting that she chose this topic to be talking about in her paper. And she did tell me a story about how her mom picks up roadkill from the side of the road, and they take it home and they eat it. And she was telling me about how you can tell whether it's gone bad or not depending on how cloudy the eyes are. So that was interesting. So she just brings a lot of unique interest to the table. She reads at a 10th grade level, so that's the second bullet point, the 1010 to the 1200 Lexile reading score. And the average 5th grader reads from 700 to 799 of the Lexile score. And so she's definitely above her grade level, and she's gifted in that sense. She read this paragraph here on the right. It's just part of a section that I had her read out loud for me. And she, the only word she didn't know how to say, didn't know what it was paradigm. And that was a new for her. And then when she reads, she doesn't know how to breathe. And so she will run out of breath in the middle of a sentence and breathe really deeply and keep going. And she just like speed reads, and she reads as fast as she can until she runs out of breath. And then when she reads to herself, she scans the page really fast, and she's able to recall back a fact or two, but I think that she has a hard time remembering everything. So her comprehension is actually pretty low, but she still reads very quickly, and she can understand if she sits down and she really reads it and really focuses, but I think that she just has trouble focusing enough to really understand. And then when it comes to her writing, she has a really hard time. First, she has poor spelling. For example, the 2 bullet points here, the first one was ideas, and the second one is obviously government. And so she relies a lot on spell check to correct her grammar and her spelling. And she didn't write on with pen and paper at all. She wrote completely with her computer. So she relies a lot on spell check. And then she struggles to put her thoughts into words. So she can recall back exact facts, like word for word facts, but she can't process what she's read and write it in her own words. She really has a hard time with that. And then I also noticed that she struggles with the writing process. And when I sat down with her and was like, okay, you have enough research, let's begin your paper, she really didn't know where to start, and she was really confused as to how to begin that process. So that was really interesting. And then she's definitely an auditory learner when it comes to listening. When anybody's talking, she keeps eye contact with them, and she can repeat back what's being said, and she's able to ask or answer questions about whatever has been said. And then I realized a couple of times when I had come in to help her, she had been listening to like podcasts or watching videos or things like that. And I think that's where she got most of her research from. Most of her information that she just like had stored in her brain was from those sites or those resources, because she just understands them more easily. With her speaking, she is extremely fluent and clear when she talks. And she also has a really large range of vocabulary, and it's not something typical for a 5th grader, and she just speaks very fluently. So she's very high in this area of literacy. So for my instructional plan, I wanted to focus primarily on her reading and comprehension and her writing, because those are her lowest areas. So for reading, I chose this standard here because, it's basically summarizing the text and understanding what is being said within the text. So I chose to have her do this by answering questions as she's read. So I would ask her a question, for example, what did that text say about the workers? And I would have her go back and reread the text to understand really what it was saying, and so that she could explain it back to me. And so then I also expressed to her that she really needed to slow down her reading because she did a lot of scanning and a lot of quick reading, and if she slowed down, she would be able to understand it more, which makes a lot of sense. And then for the second one, the writing, I chose these statements or these standards, which the first one is to produce clear and coherent writing, and then the second one is to go through the writing process. And so when she started writing, her writing was just a lot of jumbled thoughts and a lot of facts that she had memorized that were all kind of put together. And so I chose to have her first write her thoughts in bullet points in a chart form. So I just created a little table on her Word document and had her write bullet points for just the thoughts. And so instead of writing the entire fact, I would have her write a little bullet point. And then she could use that later on to help her with her writing. And then this helped her avoid writing word for word statements later on in her paper, because she would go back and look at the bullet points and she would be able to just remember the fact, but not word for word because she hadn't just read it, if that makes sense. And so then this also helped her with the chart. It helped her with the writing process because I had her write the bullet points, the facts, in sections as to how she wanted to organize her paper. So then this helped her plan out her paper, and it wasn't as overwhelming for her. So after giving these tasks, she seemed to be making some progress on her paper. For reading, she was able to start to read to understand, and her comprehension increased. So for writing, she was able to finally start on her paper and figure out how to put her thoughts into words. And this on the right-hand side is an example of her writing. This is her introduction paragraph, and as I read it, it has more of her voice in it, even though it's still, if you read it, it doesn't sound like what a fifth grader would be saying, but it definitely is her voice because her speaking is so high. But a little bit of the tasks that I gave her were able to kind of get the ball rolling on her paper and were to help her understand just how to start that writing process. So if I had had more time with her, it would have been really interesting to see the rest of her progress throughout this project. But when the day came for her to turn in her paper, she hadn't had it done. So I don't have the full paper, the full experience, but I was still able to learn a lot. So overall, I was able to learn a lot about literacy through this project. So I was able to learn that students are going to have different levels of literacy in each area. So even though Sophie was really, really high in her speaking, she was really, really low in her writing. And so for some reason in my head, I'd always thought, if you're high in one area, you're going to be high in all the rest, but that's not the case. So I was able to learn that and be able to gain a little bit more insight on that. And then I was also able to learn about gifted students and the fact that she's super gifted in how she speaks and how she communicates with others, but then again, kind of like the last bullet point, she is still low in other areas. And then I was also able to learn a little bit about the writing process of younger learners, and they really are still learning how to write. And so I don't know for sure, but this was probably one of the first papers that she had written, and she was really having a hard time sitting down and writing, and she had no clue where to start, and it was really overwhelming for her. But with the help from others, from Mr. Durfee and from myself, we were able to help her kind of grasp the concept of writing something and to sit down and get things done for the most part. And yeah, so then this also taught me a lot about patience because I went into this, I don't even know I didn't know what my expectations were when I went into this, but I was able to learn a lot about young learners and how to be patient and how to walk them through processes, and it was able to teach me a lot about just the young learner and their writing process. So anyways, thank you for listening.